Wish give me a massage on the other side. Am Yisrael's traveling, and we're back already from the southern trip towards Yam Suf, and we're going around the mountains, and we reach the area of Moab. Already God tells us, don't provoke Moab. Where is that stated? In the speech of Moshe in Dvarim. So to Ammon, don't provoke them to war. Apparently there were people that wanted to go to war against them. Otherwise, why does Moshe have to mention in his speech in Dvarim, don't provoke them, don't go to war. They have a right for their inheritance. Like we said yesterday, Ammon, Moab are the children of Lot. And they have a right for their own land. God gave them because Lot is part of the family of Avram Avinu. So here we're learning about our traveling, coming back up north, going around the Edomite mountains, parking opposite Moab, as we see here in verses 12, 13, and 14, and 21. And there are some hidden wars that we don't have the time to mention here in verse 14 and 15 and 16, where apparently there were enemy soldiers getting ready to clobber the Jewish people, and some mountains collided, and blood fell into the waters down below, and we found out that the enemies were trying to fight us, and God did some great miracles, which led to, in verse 17 and 18, a song of victory, a song of praise that God has saved the Jewish people. We didn't even know that we were about to attack. And then, in verse 21, that's where I want to start from right now. Israel, Am Yisrael, led by Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim, sends a group of shlichim, emissaries, to Sihon, saying the first, can we please pass through your land? And of course we say, we're not going to destroy your fields or your vineyards. We're not going to take your waterway. We'll just go on your interstate highway called Derech HaMelech. And what happens here? Sihon not only does not give us an allowance in verse 23, but rather he mobilizes his forces. And it seems, who instigates a war?
He does.
He does. That's what it states here. The same thing will appear when we learn about Og, the king of the area called Bashan. There too, later, the upcoming verses, he too instigates a war. Now, when you learn the Rambam brings the oral Torah. When the Rambam discusses in his famous book called Shmone Prakim, the 8 chapters, part of his introductions to the oral Torah, the Rambam discusses free will. And God doesn't want to take free will away. Did we learn ever in Chumash Hananel that Hashem did take away the free will of someone? Do you remember that Hashem took away the free will? Do you remember the taking away of free will?
Yeah.
Very good. So he mentions there Paro. Hashem hardened his heart. Hashem has a national, universal plan of things to appear, the greatness, the powers of God, that an entire nation will see and discover. And that will be the basis for the faith of Israel for all centuries and generations. And then we're told something which some of you were a bit surprised. And it says in the book of Devarim literally that God hardened the hearts of Sihon and Og, instigating them to come to do the war. Hashem wants Sihon and Og, the king of Bashan, to fight against the Jewish people. And our question is, now that they attacked, and even if they were, their hearts were hardened, and why is it so important for the Torah to present this to us? These two wars. Okay? Could we not walk or travel in another direction? Can we not be, peaceful people and see if there's a war, let's go the other way? What's so important about Moshe Rabbeinu capturing these vast lands like we just saw on the map, from the southern tip of the Arnon River all the way up to the Golan Heights of today? Tremendous, tremendous amount of area. And by the way, what's the ramification? So After we're told in verse 24 the amount of land that we capture from the Arnon to the Abok and so on and so forth, and we're told that already Sihon had captured lands of Moab, and now we're capturing the same lands. In other words, from the Arnon, including the lands of Moab, all these lands are captured because Emory was already imperialistic. They captured the areas of Moab. My dear friends, and is there another question? Is there any relationship between the capturing of the lands and the opening of our parasha? My dear friends, in this 40th year, this is a short that I heard from one of my rabbis, Rav Kashtiel from Eli. By the way, the two, Sihon and Og, they are brothers from the same father. So Og himself is an Amorite as well. Here, two great wars. Two great wars. Am Yisrael is about to go into the land. It could be that the Canaanites, that their senses, their feelings of the Jewish people have hardened. They're no longer fearful, even though they were perhaps fearful ever since we came out of Mitzrayim and the miracle of the splitting of the sea. But here, Moshe Rabbeinu was given the job to begin capturing the land of Israel. No, not the western side of the land of Israel, but rather the eastern side. Who will be in charge of capturing the western side? Yoshua ben Nun, the disciple of Moshe Rabbeinu. And then we'll see the consecutiveness, the capturing of the eastern side of Og and Sihon, and later the wars of Yoshua. When we get to the Parashat Balak, and we're camping now in the valley, and they're on top, the nation of Moab. They were captured by Sihon. And now we captured the entire area in the war against Sihon. They're fearful. They're so fearful. They want to hire the sorcerer, the magician of the generation called to curse us. Why are they so fearful?
Because Moshe defeated the powerhouse.
Wow. We defeated Moshe Rabbeinu, and the nation of Israel defeated the strongest entity perhaps in the Middle East, Sihon, the king of Amorah, and Og Melech HaBashan. So we see already impact number one. If we asked our question, what is the impact of these two great wars? Right now, when we're settling on the valley, just by the water of the Jordan, the Moabite nation on top, on the mountain, they're frightened to death. As the next parsha opens up, Vayagor Moab, they're so fearful, so dreadful. Number two, another ramification. Do you remember the name of the big prostitute of the Middle East? What's her name? Rachav. She turned 180 degrees, as we learned a few weeks ago in the Haftarah of Shlach. And she expresses to how many spies were sent in? Two spies sent in, that the people of Canaan, the Canaanites, their hearts are melting. So fearful. Why? She puts two things together. What happened 40 years ago in the splitting of the sea? We heard about that. And she talks about the capturing of Sihon and Og. That's ramification number two. She is giving an indication of how the Canaanites are so fearful of the Jewish people because of this present event that happened. This war that happened in the 40th year. Now, that's point number two. What's your favorite author, poet, writer, chief of staff, king? What's his name? David HaMelech, right? That's his name. David HaMelech, King David, right? Instead of having a picture of Elvis Presley on the back of our wall, we have a picture of David HaMelech, but we don't know what he looks like, so don't fool yourself. Okay? Now, what's the name of that great book that he wrote? Tehillim. Psalms. What's that name? What chapter? That great chapter that he writes? Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Ki Li Olam Chasdo. Remember that chapter? What chapter is that? No, it's not 100. Is it which one? Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Ki Li. Which is it? Which what? I'm sorry that I forgot it myself. For those that want to open it up, will I find it in our prayer service? Psuket Zimra of which day? Here, every day? No. Very good. 117 is it? Okay. I'm 117?
136.
136.
The Kalim?
136? Are the sources given in this edition? 136. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes? It's in the Psuket Zimra of Shabbat and Yom Tov. I think about 26. Hodul Hashem Kitov. And then it ends with Ki Liolam Chazal. We're giving thanks to God, He's so good. And then the second part of the verse is, forever is His kindness. Ki Liolam Chazal. Gentlemen, if you measure or count how many verses of praise there appears regarding the great exodus of Egypt, right? The basis of our faith. You'll find there 5 verses. Is it? You found the beginning. Thank you. Like Yisrael said, 136. Okay. For those that have seen it before, it looks like this. Yes. Now, of these 26 verses, there are 5 verses about the greatness of God taking us out of Egypt. Now listen to the next thing. What about the following? I'd like to read it in front of you. Lemakei melachim gedolim. We're thanking God who struck down great kings. The Rashi does say it's talking about the 31 kings of Canaan, but I'm going through a different commentary. Verse number 1. You know the melachim gedolim here are? Who are these great kings that we're talking about? Og, Sihon and Og. Next pasuk. Vayarog melachim adirim. And God slew the mighty kings. Verse number 2. Verse number 3. Sihon, the king of Emori. Verse number 4. Og melech Bashan. Verse number 5. V'natan artzam lenachala. God gave their land as a heritage. Gentlemen, 5 psukim, King David refers to these 2 mighty warriors. So what does it show? What kind of impact does it have? Tremendous. The victory of the Jewish people led by Moshe Rabbeinu on Sihon and on Og, King David, hundreds of years later, right? We're talking about almost 800 years later, decides through his Ruach HaKodesh. Tehillim Psalms is not an academic work of a doctorate at Hebrew University. The book of Psalms is a result of divine inspiration. We call so a level under prophecy, called in Hebrew Ruach HaKodesh. That's what David HaMelech is writing about this book, and that's why our sages decided to institute it, to place it inside the book of the Tanakh, because it's written out of Ruach HaKodesh. So here we see the impact it's having on the Jewish people. 5 psukim here, just like the event of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Now, the farewell speech of Moshe Rabbeinu, where will I find it? In which Chumash? Chumash Devarim. And there it says, anyone don't understand something in the Torah, come to me, I'll explain you the Torah. Okay? There, in chapter 1, verse 4 of the book of Devarim. Please, some of you have the Tanakh, so you can look it up. You don't have it in yours, Ave, because it's the next Chumash, the book of Devarim. Here it is. In the speech, Moshe says this: Acharei hakoto, after smiting him, Sihon the king of Emori, that was dwelling in the Cheshbon, and Og melech Bashan, who was sitting in Ashtaroth. All this is on the Jordan River, the other side of the Jordan River. Moshe explains the Torah. Moshe began to declare the meaning, to explain the Torah. Why? In a narrative, does Moshe Rabbeinu have to say that after we finish these wars, Now he's explaining the Torah. Apparently these words were so impactful, so influential, so important that only after we finish his wars does Moshe now, in his farewell speech, say, okay, I want to explain to you the oral Torah. I want to explain to you what tefillin is, what a sukkah is, all these things. In other words, we see here in the initial speech of the about to go into the land of Israel, only after the capturing of Sihon and Og. Rav Kook, in one of his writings, actually on the Siddur, talks about the character traits of Sihon, that he is a man of physical, brutal force. The culture of Og and Sihon, Og was a giant, by the way. The cultures of Sihon and Og, more Sihon even, is brutal force. In other words, the personal profile of the king and his culture is force, violence. In other words, and it's part of his fantastic power that he had, that he ruled over these areas. He, in fact, ruled over Moab as well. Could it be that the Torah is painting the following picture? This is a letter from Rav Kashtiel. What type of king will be ruling over the land of Israel, the land of monotheism? Will it be a king that relies upon his brutal force to go forward? Or will it be a king, and now we're going back to the initial section of our Parsha, the section of Para Aduma, the red heifer, purity. The kings of Israel, they base their lives on purity and holiness. Maybe that could be the correlation between the beginning of the Parsha and the wars that we're learning about. Do you remember that a few hundred years after this event, we have a cowboy riding somewhere in the Golan Heights called Yiftach HaGiladi on the Giladi Mountains, apparently from either Gad or Menachem, and he was kicked out of his home. And then Ammon, the nation of Ammon, is about to attack the Jewish people, and they make up lies that we stole their lands and so on and so forth. And the truth is, we know that they can't use brutal force and use lies to overcome the Jewish people. Yiftach HaGiladi, who you think is like the secular Jew, riding on a cowboy horse after being kicked out of his house, he knows the Tanakh, the history of the Tanakh. And he knows that we rightfully captured the area. We're not a bunch of liars. In fact, we said we didn't capture the Moab area. Sihon captured them, and Sihon attacked us, and we took over their land. In other words, the principles of the values of what will be the Jewish people living in our land are based upon purity, are based upon truth, not force or unlawful force. If we're being attacked, we have every right, of course, to defend ourselves. This is what God wanted. God hardened the heart of Sihon and Og to initiate an attack of war against us. We had no choice. Moshe Rabbeinu had no choice. He took our soldiers, and miraculously we won these two wars. But it's greater than that. It's an idea that the profile of what will be the kings of Israel will be based upon the tenets of Torah, the principles of Judaism, which are the values of a good society, the laws of God, to determine what we do and what we do not do. We have a higher level. We have special laws of kings. You cannot take too much gold or too much silver, too much wives or too many horses. There are values of the king. That will be, through purity and through holiness, what will later become the kings of Israel. David HaMelech, when he finally becomes king over all of the land of Israel, after first ruling 7 years on the tribe of Yehudah, his own tribe, he knows the laws of Torah. It says that David is doing mishpat utzedakah in the entire country. He's bringing justice and righteousness throughout the country. It's not that now he's the most wealthy person, he doesn't care what's going on. No. The values of the Torah are really the profile of the upcoming king. And now, maybe we can say and finalize these matters and say the following. What we're learning about in these wars is getting Israel ready to go into the land of Israel. When we're going to go into the land of Israel, we warn the Canaanites, as the Yerushalmi Talmud says. We send in a letter, we're coming in, you're allowed to leave. We're sending a letter, we're coming in, you're allowed to stop your Sunday morning activities of idolatry and so on and so forth. And then when there's no other choice, only possibility number 3 lies, and that is to go to war. But that war, we're not a hostile people. You see the guy sitting next to you? Do you know what he prayed at the end of the Shemona Esrei today in the last blessing? For peace. He did it for the thing for Menachem Meir as well. It's interesting. We're a peaceful nation. We want peace. But we don't have a choice. There's the value of war. It's called Milchemet Mitzvah. One of the 613 is the war. It's a commandment to go to war. When my son right now is in a special unit in the army of Israel and he wears his green uniform, he's aware that he's wearing Bigdei Kodesh. Yes, it's Bigdei Kodesh, articles of holy clothing. Because he's willing to give up his life, like all our soldiers, on behalf of the nation. That's something very holy. He's willing to go out and defend the nation. That's what tens of thousands of our soldiers are doing every day, working day and night. So there's the value of going to war if we have no choice. It's a value. We don't look at these matters from a academic, humanistic approach of life. That's not us. We're the nation of God. Our values are set by God. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. I know that we received the Torah at Sinai. So why does it say in the Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 1, that Moshe received the Torah at Sinai? I don't need a Mishnah to tell me that. Even your 3-year-old kid knows that. So what is it coming to tell us? That even our ethics and our morals, socially, between men, in society, all those morals and ethics are godly given. That's what Moshe received at Sinai. Not only the halachic side of our life, but also with attributes, our approach to life. And we are a divine nation because he chose us and made us different. And therefore, the wars that we're learning about here are Milchemet Mitzvah. And as we said at the beginning, these two entities, they are Amorites. That means they're idolaters. That means they can be wiped out thoroughly, totally, including men, women, and children. That's going to be the law. Lo techaya kol neshama. There'll be a mitzvah that. I know it hurts us. I know some of us have soft hearts. I know it's hard for us to swallow because all of us didn't grow up with this. All of us grew up with Western culture and the norms and the expectations. Okay? Believe me, the norms and expectations not to put on those black leather straps in the morning. That's not normal. It's not part of Western life. It's godly life. You're right. So to going to war, there are godly orders. There are godly curriculum. And when we have to do that, we have to do that. And we have to overcome the humanistic, the compassionate side of our hearts. It's hard work. You're right. You're right. It's hard work. Who told you? Did God ever promise you that it's a rose garden to serve Hashem? Or cherry pie? It's not neither a rose garden nor cherry pie. It's hard work. And there's no crash course. You just can't say, oh, I'm going to study Machon Meir 6 months and I'm finished. I'm good for life. I'm sorry. The Torah is endless. You can't even climb a ladder up to heaven. It gets further than that. It's wider than the Pacific and the Atlantic put together and deeper than all deep waters because it's divine. And what's divine is related to the infinite, to the abstract, to the absolute. And it's the most beautiful thing in the world because it's total goodness. It's total goodness. I just want to, so that's more or less what I wanted to say about the learning here of the end of the Parsha. Questions?
Zeus, how many kings did we have till,
David?
look, I mean, how many Zeus? You know, we are all Zeus, and then how many kings did we have? If someone asked me,
You're asking me the number of kings in the book of Kings.
Yeah. No. The kings of Saul was the first.
Shaul was the first, a temporary kingdom. And then David became the king over Yehuda, and he became the first king over all of Israel. And he was followed by his son, Shlomo, who was followed by Rechavam. And then the entire book of Kings, I don't know the total number. Someone here knows the total number of kings, I don't know. But you know what? The next king who'll be anointed by a prophet of Israel will be the anointed king, commonly called in Hebrew, Melech HaMashiach. May come soon in our days. Amen. Ken Yiratzah.